Alright, welcome to another edition of What the Fuck? That's really what it is. Happenings here in inmendham. Yeah, in inmendham. In inmendham? Well, whatever, it doesn't matter. Intro. Anyway, on with the video. So, I made one video. Yes, I'm sorry. I have to do better, but it's just the way it's working out. Time restraints. Only so much time, only so many hours in a day. Lots of puzzles to put together for me anyway. All day long. Just all day long I'm just puzzle piece. What puzzle does it fit in? What puzzle do I put it in? Constantly. Brain just constantly playing with pieces, trying to see what matches. Anyway, yeah, it's a lot of work, frankly. My life is, you know, it's not every day is a chore. Anyway, chores, work, think. Ugh. Anyway. So, I made a video, so yes, we'll play the video. So let's jump ahead a little bit, and it's going to be like sequential. So it's about evolution, sort of. But the argument the underlying, the foundation of the argument, the point of the argument, is to diminish some notion in a person's head, if you have such a notion, that there's anything grandiose about the product of a rather grand process. I mean, evolution is a really interesting puzzle. How did we get this piece, and how did we get that piece? How did this tool happen? How did this modification take place? Very interesting. But the overall function of evolution, the struggle for survival, the tooth and claw game, is really stupid in terms of its lack of economy. If you were making these things and you were under competitive and what's the word, sensible standards of how well you made a product, it's a very poor way to make product. It's very inefficient to destroy most of what you make, and that's what evolution does. Most of what it makes has no use to the end product except to be consumed, to be brutally destroyed. That's its necessary function, and that's stupid.
On the Earth is that, yes, you have a bunch of little pieces. Well, here's the big Earth. It's not very big.
It's not very big. Not a very good drawing, blah, blah, blah. So the point is I'm just trying to explain, yes, this is just chemistry. Okay, you have stuff moving in the universe. The stuff sticks. It gets clumpy. The clumps, okay, could have attributes. And one of these, the key attribute is this capacity to replicate itself, because once it can do that, then it can change the mold, and it can just make tons and tons of stuff. And the disgusting part is it's all cannibalistic. Okay, I mean, the stuff that came out of the mold 50 million years ago is getting eaten by the stuff that comes out of the mold today, kind of thing. That it's just this, it's disgusting. Cannibalism is disgusting, and that's what it's become.
Just that's what it makes. Right, it has this.
I didn't even get into like the stealing energy argument, but yes, that's how all the advanced organisms function, is they have to go out into the environment and steal batteries, from all these other organisms. They go to the trouble to recharge their batteries and be functional, and we have to destroy them to maintain our existence. On its face, ugly. Just ugly. Stealing sucks.
Stupid, DNA form, the double helix thing, but who cares? I mean,
Alright, so it's really a crude drawing, crude explanation, just trying to get to the point that it's all just chemical process. There's all just steps. You go through the steps. This is how nature makes robots, and that's all we are, is robots. We're just machines. We're just reflexive, mechanical machines, all right? And the only thing that's a little nuanced, once you get beyond just the chemical part, is now we're capable of doing this communication idea thing. That evolution is really the controlling factor. I mean, yes, we're still motivated by all the crude, visceral, sensual mechanisms. They're still there, but we've modified them, where, it's almost like people have died strangling themselves trying to have an orgasm. I mean, just, we've become so silly in how distant we are from the basic function, and how our reflexes have been modified to make us so impossible to satisfy in some respects. It's almost funny how perverse we have become as we've become intelligent. I mean, our perversion and our intelligence, the lines are the lines are both off the chart, so to speak, in terms of how we're changing the game.
Producing chemistry.
How the game changes. We become so conditionable and so controlled by these little subtle blinking lights. Like the lights have to blink in a very specific way or we lose our functionality. Can't lay the eggs.
And the chemistry ends up being, eventually you end up with a membrane around the molecule because it creates a chemistry.
Yeah, so this is all just, and it's a very cheap, expedient version of the story, just because I'm trying to get to the bigger subject. But you really have to explain how it's just mechanical. There's nothing, there's no spiritual in here. There's no any of that crap. It's just mechanical processes to building something that meets the standards of the environment, that can get through the obstacle course, and that's all it's about.
None of it has a brain. None of it's in, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter whether it's, it doesn't matter the fate.
So most of the machines is just machine making. Who cares? The Earth makes machines. It could cover the whole planet with a bunch of machines. Well, as long as they're Coke machines, as long as they're non-sentient machines, who cares, right? It's not an issue. But as soon as you give them the capacity to be harmed, and again, I'm testifying from my own experience, okay? Feeling bad sucks. And I know it sucks for everything that feels bad. Okay? It doesn't just suck because my brain makes shitty feelings. No, all the brains make shitty feelings. So, it has to be accepted that that's what we as a collective are creating, is good feelings and shitty feelings. That's what we're playing for. That's the money in this poker game. All right, and we're deciding how much of that money is going to get burned or thrown in the garbage because of the sloppy way we're playing poker. Something like that. Not a great metaphor, but there's probably better ones, but whatever. We're doing it, we're playing with the value in this very sloppy way, and a lot of the valuable china is getting destroyed, kind of thing. We really are bulls in the china shop.
And so it just learns a strategy through evolution, where every time you bang into a certain thing, you react to certain...
So just the rudimentary paramecium kind of thing, where, yeah, you can, you just study them enough, you can find the exact reflexes. You can find, oh, it goes left, then right, then left, left, then right, then left, left, left. There's a program to everything it does, and they all do the same thing. You put them in the same circumstance, they all pretty much do the same thing. There's no capacity for them to do anything different until you change their genetic code. There's no... They're not learning from the environment. They're not learning from personal experience. They're just a program machine, and they do exactly what the program says to do. There's nothing else involved. And then there's this little transition to the next stage, the next plateau in the evolution, the next foundation in the evolution, where you create a processing unit that can learn. And my argument would be is it has to learn because of you have to give it a reward and a punishment. You have to create something that teaches it the difference between good and bad outcomes. And the way to do that is to create sensation. Now, it could have probably been created by some other kind of mechanism, some other kind of thing that we didn't feel, but we still had to react to it as if it was a feeling. But the fact is we got stuck with this model. So in trying to simulate value, that is to place value on outcomes for us, nature actually created value. So there was no value when it was just parameciums banging into each other. But there is value once you create something that can feel good and feel bad. Now you have real money in the game. It's all monopoly money until you get to sentient organisms. Now you're playing for real dollars.
And what kind of dog are we physically becoming, you know? And obviously I would argue we're, you know, modifying, we're turning into mutts. You know, where before we were sort of specialized to environments. You know, you could tell where somebody's...
Yeah, well, you really don't want to get into that kind of argument. But it's just part of the reality. Is, but you know, I don't want to get into those kind of arguments about... I mean, that's just a part of this conversation. Is, you know, it's one of the outcomes. Is, yes, we are the human race is changing its physical identity, but it's a really small part of the important conversation.
That's like being a Hitlerite. I mean, you know, that's like respecting or appreciating.
Okay, so I'm just pointing out how the evolution works on this insane attrition. Make Frankensteins, and the whole point is to literally make Frankensteins, in the sense of make things that are just put together pieces, and they might not fit together very well. Most of them won't fit together very well. So I'm sort of making the argument that you know, everybody's the product of two people that were functional, and you know, they're more likely to be dysfunctional because of that combination, not functional. And it's only the exceptional, the 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000, that actually ends up being an improvement. So we're really just breaking the functionality of our two parents. You know, you're taking two things that worked and you're going to maybe make stuff that doesn't work very well, is the more likely outcome. And it's only in the rare case that the combination actually creates an improvement. And that's just cruel, frankly. To create all these retards, you know, so you can make one thing that has a higher IQ, you know, that's just cruel.
You know, the clock hits 12 and there's an action.
Alright, so just pointing out how we're still fish, frankly. You know, most of the functions, the physical functions, are all fish functions. Okay, you know, we haven't changed the game much. It's eat, you know, gain enough extra resource to make your baby making stuff, and then make the babies, and then drop dead. You know, and the drop dead part I really didn't talk about, but that was a necessary feature somewhere early in this evolution process. It became clear that reproduction is really dangerous, because you can end up making too many copies and you deplete all the resources and you go extinct. So the only things that were going to be successful had to have some kind of mechanism to prevent them overpopulating. Something more than just starvation, because starvation was too dangerous. Starvation could lead to extermination. So there had to be some other mechanism that tempered exponential growth, and that's where death comes in. So we were programmed to die. It wasn't what the first living things did. They didn't bother doing it. They only acquired that stinking lousy feature when it became clear that you can't make copies and have enough chairs to sit in.
You know, evolving all these little features, you know, where shadows weren't the same thing as it being dark, cloud.
All right, just pointing out how each sense is in a sense a little brain, and then the idea is you have a bunch of little brains, you know, the hearing, the eyes, the taste, all these little sense organs were like becoming little brains. And just because the reflex had to have some nuance to it, it had to be able to tell the difference between, you know, a cloud and complete darkness and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, and then there was obviously an inefficiency in having a bunch of little brains in different places, and there was a efficiency in putting the brain in one place. Let one organ decide what the senses do. And so obviously the machines that saved wire by putting all the neurons in one place and having them not do redundancy things, it was more efficient, obviously.
Emotional thoughts, you know, these words and ideas and images tied to feelings.
Right, so this is the key to learning. It's just that, yes, your memories, the interactions, they program us, you know, with positive and negative experience, and that decides what we become. So it's all about controlling your event maturation. What kind of events am I going to, you know, happen to you will decide whether you're hot or cold, you know, regarding a subject or a thing or an image or a color or whatever it is, whether you like it or don't like it.
Insecurities, and they're being completely owned by emotional sensations.
Right, so most people are just preoccupied by all of that noise of being triggered constantly in a pursuit of kind of narrow goals of gaining their personal comfort, and they're really not doing any of this puzzle thinking about all of the systems we're part of, you know, how their town functions and how their state functions and how their nation functions and how the world functions and all of that crap. Not too much attention paid by the average person to the more important subject, which is, what the fuck are you doing here? Besides satisfying your own little narrative, you're, you know, telling your own little silly story, you know, writing your own little adventure story.
Percent obsessed with the puzzle of just getting through your life. Okay, just finding whatever your nirvana.
So it's really bad drawing of just brain, you know, I was just pointing out how, you know, in my youth I spent most of my time just fighting with those sensations, just fighting with my emotional problems, my little particular insecurities, and my ability to find some comfort and gratification and acceptance and all of those things. And it was just this silly little emotional struggle, you know, in a very small world inside my own psychology. And then there's a point where you realize you're in a bigger world and there's bigger things at stake than how you feel. And that changes everything, because now your brain has a bigger problem, a bigger puzzle to put pieces into. You can't just worry about how you feel. You got to worry about how you're making other things feel. And that's quite burdensome.
Triggered by lots of different things, and you're going to be triggered because of the program. What you know, there's 10 ideas, you know, and it just depends on whether you accept or reject one of those ideas. You know, makes you
right. So that makes you a Republican or Democrat. I said there, but yeah, that's all it is. It's just a list of switches. You know, you could say that you could reduce it to 100 switches or 1,000 switches, and we could just call them ideas or statements about the truth. And depending on which one of those switches you have in what position, it's going to decide your identity and what kind of robot you are. But then, and they're just reflexes. They're just, the fact is, if you believe some stupid thing, the election was stolen, or, you know, some, whatever the fact is, the description of a reality, UFOs, some other kind of thing, it's going to fuck up how any piece of information goes through those switches, and it's going to change, you know, what the tree of your thoughts will look like. You know, the reflex. I mean, it's a bunch of information in, and it's ideas out, and all of that changes based on those switches. All right, something like that. This has been. Oh, I went a little too far. All right, so we'll squeeze in one more little sentence. Attempt to. Okay, try there.
Programmed brain is to have the programming, you know, the pieces of code, the pieces of knowledge that will enable it to logically see paths, okay, of actions and reactions that will cause the effect of changing the environment.
Right. So, but it's just, you have to make the model in your head, you have to put the puzzle pieces in the right order, you have to do all this stuff, get it right, to get a right outcome. So if you don't understand you don't know the difference between rocks and crocodiles, you know, in terms of what you're jumping on, you know, you're going to make a mess of yourself, or, you know, whatever thing you're carrying, right? You're carrying the hopes and dreams of blah, blah, blah. And, you know, you have this responsibility, this precious baby, whatever. And, yeah, if you don't know where you're stepping, you're going to make a mess. And yes, most people just make more mess than do any laying out of a map. You know, hand the next generation a map that says, hey, this is a crocodile. This is not a real stone. Don't step on it. Jesus is a bad idea. Okay, yeah, the love thy neighbor shit and all that is fine. But this whole idea of a God and this whole soap opera of, you know, heavens and hells and all that nonsense, none of that's happening. Alright, there's just good ideas and bad ideas. There's good themes and bad themes. There's noise, and then there's intelligence. And you have to be able to tell the difference, or you're going to fuck up. Alright. This video is just an effort to, you know, emphasize a certain switches that I think you really need to have in the right position if you're going to play life right, if you're going to know the difference between the rocks and the crocodiles. Alright, so that's probably enough. It's probably what I need, is an inmendham video game. You know, I've always wanted to do that. It's just, you know, I just need 100 years to do it. I don't have them. So anyway, takes me a long time to do some things because, you know, I don't know how to do them, so I have to learn how to do them, and, you know, it takes time. So anyway, enough said. So till the next time, and such and so forth and whatnot. Yeah, that's the video for today. And so let's see what happens. See you next time. That's probably just good enough, right? See you next time. That's all, folks. Anyway, till the next time, that's all. Alright, so this has been a donotgod.com video presentation and such.